Ashe, and welcome to another special episode of our Mandatory Mental Liberation Message series, written and produced by our esteemed elder Baba Jelani Bomani Dembe, the brilliant founder of Majestic Mind Matters University. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin, for this new episode. The necessity of the Mandatory Mental Liberation series at Majestic Mind Matters University lies in our focus on serving our melanin-rich culture nation. By addressing the importance of knowledge of self to produce greater self-awareness and advocating for our mental liberation, especially for our precious melanin-rich culture children, our messages aim to combat the enduring effects of generational mental enslavement stemming from the historical trauma of the chattel enslavement of the ancestors. Our initiative seeks to empower us to break free from these harmful and unfavorable legacies and cultivate a deep-rooted sense of self-identity and unwavering resilience. Each moment you spend with us is a gift, a chance to grow, to learn, to be inspired. So stay with us till the end, where the real magic happens. Now, let's get started with this very special melanin-rich culture message titled, The Kerner Commission, the urgency of staying woke in the reclamation of our melanin-rich cultural heritage. In the face of systemic oppression and social injustice, the imperative for us, as individuals of a melanin-rich cultural heritage, to stay woke is crucial. The Kerner Commission, established in 1967 in response to the civil unrest and riots across American cities, revealed and emphasized the depth of racial inequality and discrimination that pervaded our nation. The Commission's findings remain highly relevant today, as they illuminate the psychological effects that racism and oppression have on our lives. We are living in a time where the consequences of historical injustices continue to adversely affect us, and it is essential for us to reclaim our cultural heritage immediately to ensure the mental liberation of our precious children. The mental transformation we experience, rooted in centuries of colonization and systemic violence, strips us of our identity and self-worth. Dr. Marimba Ani, in her writings on the African worldview, speaks to the urgency of cultural reclamation. We must acknowledge our rich history, often referred to as Alkebulan, the original name of Africa, the birthplace of civilization. This reclamation is not simply an act of nostalgia, it is a vital step toward our mental liberation. By understanding and honoring our ancestry, we break the chains of psychological colonialism that historically separated us from our roots. In contemporary society, media produced by artisans like Jordan Peele and Little Marvin serves as a crucial commentary on the psychological effects of social injustice. Through films such as Get Out and Them, these creators highlight the latent and overt racism that pervades our lives. They mirror our reality by distilling the fears, traumas, and betrayals we face daily into compelling narratives. These works resonate deeply with our experiences. By staying woke, we affirm that these narratives are not just entertainment, they are affirmations of our struggles, urging us to recognize the ongoing impact of systemic oppression. As we confront these realities, we must hold in high esteem our melanin-rich culture and the women who have borne the brunt of these struggles, often in isolation. We recognize how historical and systemic barriers have led to their marginalization. Our women represent resilience and strength, facing adversities that have often left them alone in their fight. It is our duty to embrace and uplift these figures in our communities. Moreover, our melanin-rich culture men have consistently rallied to protect our women, children, the elderly, and our vulnerable. In solidarity, we must honor these guardians who bravely stand against oppression. Central to our movement toward liberation is the understanding that the terms used to describe us, such as Black, Brown, people of color, and African, are linguistic constructs created by colonizers to divide and discriminate. The insidious effects of these terms perpetuate a divisive narrative that continues to undermine our unity. Thus, we must reject the illusion of inclusion since we do not write the rules that govern our existence. Those rules often sustain systemic oppression. Moreover, the Kerner Commission's findings illustrate how racism has evolved to become more covert, adopting a sophisticated disguise to remain pervasive in our society. Mass incarceration stands as a replacement for chattel enslavement, effectively creating new shackles through systemic laws that target our marginalized communities. We must examine the historical concept of drapetomania, a term constructed to explain the deviant behavior of enslaved individuals who sought freedom, which still reverberates in today's societal expectations. In acknowledging these constructs, we must confront Stockholm Syndrome, which creates a psychological bond between the oppressed and the oppressor. We must not allow ourselves to become complicit in our subjugation. Instead, we must seek holistic healthcare that celebrates our cultural identity while addressing the unique challenges we face. The time has come where we no longer accept empty symbolic gestures in exchange for our votes. We demand tangible changes that directly benefit our communities. We seek reparations and systemic transformation as rightful pursuits rather than mere political concessions. Holistic approaches to healthcare and education must be established, rooted in our cultural values and priorities. We must mobilize our unity to honor our ancestors, especially those whose names have been lost to history and who suffered under the weight of systemic oppression. Let us embody the original definition of being, woke, as it signifies not just awareness, but a collective awakening to the realities faced by our melanin-rich culture. By reclaiming our heritage and supporting one another in this journey, we can extinguish the remnants of colonial thought and rise in our authenticity. The liberation of our precious children and our communities depends on it. Let us remain vigilant and united in our commitment to profound change. Our next topic in this special Majestic Mind Matters University Mandatory Mental Liberation Message series is titled, The Reclamation of Our Melanin-Rich Cultural Heritage. A foundation for addressing psychological effects of police brutality and social injustice. In our relentless journey toward healing and empowerment, we discover that the reclamation of our melanin-rich cultural heritage stands as a foundational pillar upon which we can build resilience against the psychological ramifications of police brutality and social injustice. The trauma rooted in centuries of oppression, most starkly illustrated during the civil rights era and further highlighted by the findings of the Kerner Commission, still reverberates today within our communities. The Commission's 1968 report underscored the deep socioeconomic divides and systemic injustices faced by African Americans, ultimately positing that these disparities present a pressing challenge to our societal fabric. It is our responsibility to acknowledge the burdens that have been placed upon us and to actively reclaim our history and identity in a manner that fosters mental liberation and nurtures the next generation. The psychological effects of racism and oppression are not merely abstract concepts, but tangible experiences that permeate our daily lives. We, as melanin-rich individuals, often face the weight of collective trauma that manifests in anxiety, depression, and a pervasive sense of fear regarding our safety and dignity. The acts of violence we witness, perpetuated by those sworn to protect us, serve as a constant reminder of our vulnerability, a vulnerability rooted in a historical narrative that has systematically dehumanized us. Yet, amid these challenges, we must understand that our cultural heritage is not merely a relic of the past. It is a living testament to our strength and resilience. We must harness this heritage as a tool for healing, providing our children with a sense of identity and belonging that combats the negative psychological impacts of contemporary injustices. As we strive to stay woke, we must confront the adverse effects that systemic oppression has on our communities. We are deeply aware that many among us carry the scars of marginalization, perpetuated by systemic racism and socioeconomic disenfranchisement. With this knowledge, we approach the reclamation of our cultural heritage not as a passive endeavor, but as an urgent mandate that serves the immediate mental liberation of our precious children. We must teach them that their melanin is not a marker of inferiority, but a badge of honor, representing a lineage of greatness and resilience. In this context, the cinematic works of creators like Jordan Peele and little Marvin serve as poignant reflections of our societal struggles. In films such as Get Out and the series Them, these artists translate our lived experiences into narratives that expose the insidious nature of racism and oppression. Through horror and psychological thriller genres, they confront viewers with the brutal realities of systemic injustice, forcing us to reckon with the intersections of race, identity, and trauma. Their artistry not only entertains, but also educates, prompting necessary dialogues about the psychological effects of violence and the reclamation of agency within our communities. To reclaim our melanin-rich cultural heritage, we must ground our efforts in unity and collective strength, with an emphasis on fostering strong relationships within our own race. It is imperative that we honor our women, those who have borne the brunt of oppression and have often faced struggles and isolation due to systemic disempowerment. We stand in solidarity with these women, recognizing their invaluable contributions and resilience. Similarly, we must embrace and uplift our melanin-rich men who have consistently rallied to protect our families and communities. Together, we fortify our collective identity. In reclaiming our knowledge of self and our roots, we must acknowledge the historical significance of our motherland, indigenous known as Alkebulan, the birthplace of civilization. Understanding our origins is vital to mentally liberating ourselves from the oppressive ideologies imposed by outsiders. We must actively shun these imposed religions and societal norms that do not reflect our inherent values and spirituality. Instead, we should engage with our original spiritual frameworks, which honor our ancestors and acknowledge the devastating impacts of chattel enslavement. As we journey towards reclamation and mental liberation, we stand united in our commitment to forging a path forward. Our melanin-rich cultural heritage is an invaluable asset that fosters resilience, nurtures the next generation, and empowers us to combat the psychological effects of social injustices. By embracing our past and honoring the struggles of those before us, we lay the groundwork for a brighter future, one in which our children can thrive in their identity, dignity, and humanity. In this reclamation, we ignite a movement of healing that resonates across our communities and beyond, creating a global charge toward unity and equity for all. Our next topic in this special Majestic Mind Matters University Mandatory Mental Liberation Message series is titled The Historical Trauma in Get Out and Them, a Call to Collective Recognition and Unification. As we reflect upon the narratives orchestrated in films like Get Out and Them, we are plunged into a profound examination of the historical trauma borne by our ancestors. These cinematic expressions serve not merely as entertainment, but as stark reminders of the enduring consequences of systemic oppression that continue to impact our lives today. The pain etched in our shared histories urges us to recognize and honor our collective experiences while confronting the harsh realities of modern-day racism, discrimination, and the systemic inequities that persist within our societies. The 1968 Kerner Report notably posits that America is moving toward two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. This declaration remains relevant as we navigate through the intricate web of socio-political challenges that affect our melanin-rich communities. Both Get Out and Them capture the essence of this commentary by exploring how psychological terror and racial discrimination continue to haunt us. They embody the anxiety that festers within us as we confront a society committed to maintaining the structures of privilege and oppression. The urgency to stay woke compels us as descendants of a rich tapestry of cultures to acknowledge the detrimental effects that historical traumas have inflicted upon our psyches and our communities. The legacy of mass incarceration, for instance, serves as a contemporary manifestation of chattel enslavement. Systems have been constructed to perpetuate marginalization, where oppressive laws target our communities, often leading to devastating consequences for our youth. This continues to uphold a cycle of violence against our people, with many of our ancestors' struggles being overshadowed by systemic neglect. We understand that many of our ancestors remain unmentioned, their names lost to time, sacrificed in the unrelenting fight against oppression. We must remember and honor those lives that were extinguished by secret societies and clandestine organizations that perpetuated fear and violence within our communities. This is integral to our collective healing. Recognizing the missing and the murdered recollectively binds our struggle for justice and truth. Moreover, the issue of Stockholm Syndrome remains a potent factor in our collective psyche. It illustrates a complicated relationship where we, at times, internalize the values and norms of systems that perpetuate our oppression. This mental transformation, the profound loss of our cultural legacy, and the acceptance of an identity imposed upon us, is a consequence of being stolen, both literally and figuratively. The identities assigned to us, such as black, brown, or people of color, are terms laden with the weight of colonial history, designed to segregate and tokenize our experiences. These labels obscure the rich diversity inherent in our cultures, fragmenting our unity and reinforcing division. The psychological ramifications of these oppressive systemic structures are immense. As melanin-rich people, we embody a history steeped in resilience, yet we often navigate a world that remains hostile and suspicious of our existence. The racism we face today is often more covert and insidious, further complicated by a veneer of progress that barely acknowledges the struggles we endure. It seeps into institutions, education systems, and economic policies, exacerbating cycles of poverty and disenfranchisement that ensnare our people globally. Our reclamation of melanin-rich cultural heritage and civilization is not merely an act of nostalgia. It is essential for the mandatory mental liberation of our precious children. We must instill in them a sense of pride in their ancestry and an understanding of the historical context that shapes their present realities. This reclamation serves as resistance against the forces that seek to erase our identities and legacies. Each narrative we share honors our people, establishes connections, and reinforces a cultural foundation that strengthens our collective resolve against the forces of oppression. Our joint efforts to unify globally necessitate an earnest memorialization of our ancestors and community members lost to violence, discrimination, and systemic neglect. As we navigate our contemporary struggles, we must recognize the historical traumas that continue to shape our reality. By embracing our melanin-rich heritage, acknowledging the pervasive impacts of racism and oppression, and affirming our collective identity, we can carve a path toward healing and liberation for ourselves and future generations. Together, we stand resilient, ready to reclaim our narrative and uplift our communities, transforming our pain into strength and perseverance. The conclusion topic in this special Majestic Mind Matters University Mandatory Mental Liberation Message series is titled, Empowering Our Melanin-Rich Culture, A Path to Liberation. As members of a melanin-rich culture, we must recognize the enduring impact of racism and oppression that continues to shape our realities. The Kerner Report, issued in 1968, serves as a sobering reminder of the systemic inequalities that persist even today. With its assessment that America was moving towards two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal, we must confront the paradigm that continues to fracture our communities. This historical context fuels our collective understanding of the need for active empowerment and support of our men and women to reclaim our narratives, reaffirm our heritage, and educate our children about their rich history. To combat the pervasive impacts of racism and oppression, it is essential that we adopt strategies that elevate our communities materially, psychologically, and socially. The essence of staying woke lies in acknowledging the depth of our struggle while wielding that awareness as a catalyst for tangible change. We are adverse to empty symbolisms that seek to placate us with mere acknowledgement instead of actionable policies. For instance, we can no longer accept the conditional promises of inclusion that do not cater to our socioeconomic needs. Instead, we demand substantial investments in our communities, such as building strong educational institutions and accessible healthcare systems that reflect our values and priorities. An example of this discourse is our collective stance against corporate diversity initiatives that translate into mere tokenism. When voting, we should prioritize candidates who not only recognize our plight, but also commit to policies that yield concrete outcomes, such as systematic reforms that disrupt cycles of poverty in our communities. By voting based on candidates' track records of supporting Black-owned businesses and advocating for affordable healthcare, we fortify ourselves against the illusion of inclusion that has historically sidelined our interests. Moreover, we must acknowledge that our trust in the frameworks designed to uphold systemic oppression undermines our progress. The notion of meritorious manumission, as introduced during the period of slavery, remains relevant as it underscores how even today, we are often rewarded for overlooking systemic injustices in favor of individual achievements. This constructs a false narrative around upward mobility that ignores the structural barriers we face. We must strive to cultivate an environment that prioritizes collective success over individual accolades, fostering unity rather than discord. The Kerner Commission's recommendations are particularly poignant as they underscore the integral role of holistic healthcare in our communities. Holistic healthcare is not merely an alternative approach, but a necessity for our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. It acknowledges the historical traumas we endure and adopts inclusive practices that promote cultural healing. By ensuring that our healthcare systems reflect our traditions, values, and experiences, we harness the power to reclaim our identity and foster resilience. The devastating reality of having our identities stolen and forcibly relinquished is a wound that requires concerted healing. The systematic oppression we face has marred our sense of self and community, and it is our imperative to reclaim and celebrate our illustrious heritage. By immersing our children in their cultural history and achievements, by celebrating leaders, innovators, and artists from our melanin-rich lineage, we cultivate a sense of pride and self-esteem that empowers the next generation. In the pursuit of liberation for our children, it is imperative that we engage them in conversations about their rights, history, and the social dynamics that affect their lives. Education must extend beyond textbooks and traditional schooling. It should encompass community dialogues, art forms, and experiential learning that connects our children to their lineage. This holistic understanding of who they are will fortify their sense of agency against systemic attempts to diminish their worth. Our collective goal is to uplift, educate, and empower our melanin-rich culture in a world that has perpetuated inequities for far too long. We are resolute in our commitment to reclaim our history, dismantle oppressive structures, and foster holistic well-being within our communities. By actively refusing to accept superficial measures that fail to honor our heritage, and by focusing on tangible outcomes in our political engagements, we lay the groundwork for a future where our children can thrive, proud of their identity and culture. The journey towards liberation is not merely a responsibility, but a collective destiny we embrace with unwavering resolve. Together, we stay woke. I'm your royal narrator, Queen Magical Melanin. We trust that this very special message has expanded your understanding through the insights shared by our highly esteemed producer, Elder Baba Jelani Bomani Dembe, founder of Majestic Mind Matters University, in our Mandatory Mental Liberation Series special message. Remember this, it is essential to honor the ancestors. We have a unique connection to the ancestors. They endured many unwarranted struggles, preserved our melanin-rich culture, and passed down invaluable wisdom through many generations. By honoring the ancestors, we pay honorable tribute to our roots and draw great strength and much-needed inspiration from the unwavering resilience and royal legacy that has paved the way for our present and future generations. Ancestral reverence is a powerful way for us to continually uphold our own melanin-rich identity, heritage, and cultural legacy. Here is an ancient Alkebulan proverb to keep in mind. If you think you are too small to make a difference, you have not spent the night with a mosquito. Remember this as well, whenever you are in the presence of anyone, saying, "They don't see color," it actually means, "They don't see you." We acknowledge and honor the indigenous name of our glorious continent as Alkebulan. This name means Mother of Mankind in various Alkebulan languages such as Akuyu, Swahili, and Kemet, referring to ancient Egypt and rejecting the terms Africa or African. As royal members of our melanin-rich culture nation, we must strive for knowledge of self for greater personal awareness. Always treat yourself kindly and seek to live a totally awesome and gloriously fulfilling melanin-rich culture life. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. So, like, subscribe, to stay updated, and share this very special melanin-rich culture link with everyone that you care about and that really cares about you and all of yours as well. And thank you for listening to this enchanting special message. Stay woke. Ashe.